From growing up in an illustrious family of judges and lawyers to becoming the Chief Justice of India, how do you reminisce about this incredible journey of yours in law?
Well, it's been an enriching journey ever since I joined the bar, and then when I became a judge of the Bombay High Court onwards for 24 years. First as a judge of the High Court, then as a Chief Justice, and then a judge of the Supreme Court and Chief Justice of India. But really speaking, the journey is full of diverse and enriching experiences. As a member of the bar, you have a relative freedom. You meet diverse people who are your clients. You meet your opponents, your friends, your colleagues at the bar. You are mentored by senior lawyers, the greats at the bar at whose feet we learnt the craft of lawyering. But above all, we were also mentored by amazing judges on the bench when I was a young lawyer. When it came to being a judge, it was a completely different universe and a different part of life, chapter of life. Judging was all about bringing justice to our common citizens. So from the intense competition among lawyers to succeed in a case, as a judge you don't have to succeed in a case. You're not tied to a particular brief. So the joy of being a judge was the fact that you could do justice to citizens. When I came to the Supreme Court, there was a sense of liberation because you're not as bound by precedent as high courts are. Of course, in the Supreme Court, we also looked at past precedent, but we had that ability to relook at past precedents. It was an amazing journey as a judge of the Supreme Court because we dealt with some of the most seminal issues of our time in terms of constitutional interpretation, statutory interpretation, and then finally as the Chief Justice of India. The Chief Justice of India is, of course, first and foremost a judge, the first amongst equals. But apart from the task of judging, there was so much of administrative work which I had to do, probably 4 or 5 hours every evening after work was complete on the bench, to look at all the administrative issues of the nation's judiciary. So all in all, this has been an extraordinarily enriching time. I learned so much about India. I learned so much about the diverse cultures, regions, languages, religions. As Chief Justice of the Allahabad High Court, I learned about the heartland of India. As a judge of the Bombay High Court, I learned about the commercial capital of India that Mumbai is. But above all, as a judge of the Supreme Court, I learned to look at India in its totality. And I think that has made for a very satisfying life, both off and on the bench.
Can you share your experience as a lawyer at the Bombay High Court and the Supreme Court? Also, how impactful was it in molding your career as a judge?
Well, your formative years are spent at the bar, especially since I was appointed to the bench from the bar. We had some top quality lawyers, both on the commercial side of the Bombay High Court, the original side, as well as on the appellate side. And truly, I learned the intricacies of advocacy, intricacies of cross-examination, intricacies of land revenue laws, intricacies of commercial law from some of the greatest lawyers of the time, whether it was Mr. Fali Nariman, Mr. Soli Sorabji, Mr. Ashok Desai, and a whole host of other lawyers. My own senior, Mr. Temten Andyarujana, who was an outstanding lawyer of his time. So in a sense, as lawyers, we were very carefully nurtured by the chambers to which we belonged. I was in the chamber of Mr. Andyarujana, senior member of the bar. But we had this tradition in Mumbai that you could appear with any other senior even outside your chamber. And you could even appear against your own senior in a case where you were briefed against your senior. So this was the diversity of practice in Mumbai. I made it a point to work in different jurisdictions in Mumbai and not just confine myself either to the commercial or to the writ jurisdiction, the public law jurisdiction. And the cases in Mumbai always gave me an opportunity to travel to Delhi when those cases went in appeal. And after the work of our small cases which went in appeal to the Supreme Court was done, I would sit back in the afternoons and go to the Constitution bench, where typically one of the great lawyers of the time, I remember Mr. K. Parasaran, for instance, unfolding the essentials of constitutional interpretation, or Mr. K. K. Venugopal, at that time, arguing an important constitutional case before the Constitution bench of the Supreme Court. So lawyers, I do believe, learn a lot by watching other lawyers and watching other judges. So in my formative years and even thereafter, I learned a great deal by just observing others. The power of observation is crucial for a young lawyer and for a senior lawyer, because you realize that there are so many things which good lawyers do and so many things which a good lawyer shouldn't do. And so from both perspectives, I think the period which I spent both in the Bombay Bar and in the Bar of the Supreme Court were responsible for my evolution, not just as a lawyer, as a judge, but about understanding the societal problems which we have to deal with. And it was in the problems of our citizens that we really came to realize what the true position of law in the social ordering is, and how does the use of the law in a wise judge's hands, or in the wise hands of a good lawyer, how does the purpose of the law get satisfied? So these are some of the important learning lessons that I learned both at the bar, in the Bombay High Court and in the Supreme Court.
During your tenure as the Honorable Chief Justice of India, you attained hitherto unseen advancement through adopting technology in core areas right from the grassroots level, and thereby expanding the judicial infrastructure. What does the future hold for the technological upsurge in the Indian judiciary?
Well, we have a huge backlog of cases. That's one. Now, technology would contribute to my mind to better knowledge management and better litigation management of the Indian judiciary. We have commenced several new initiatives in the recent past, such as the e-filing of cases, digitization of cases, transcription of oral arguments from oral to written text. We have launched the digital Supreme Court reports. The object behind the adoption of technology is to connect the courts with common citizens. So technology, to my mind, is not a newfangled idea to somehow carve out a different place for the court which is extremely high-tech. Of course, technology would be a very crucial element in the evolution of the courts in the future. But the underlying object of technology is to make access to justice simple to our citizens. And there are so many ways in which we can do it. Going forward, I think artificial intelligence would have a very crucial role to play in the onward march of the legal profession. Artificial intelligence has the power to collate large volumes of data, and the speed at which artificial intelligence can put together networks of information is incomparable. And therefore, artificial intelligence would have a very vital role to play, both in the procedural as well as in the substantive aspects of the judicial process. Now, on the substance of judicial decision making, to what extent we would use artificial intelligence in the future, this is a serious question which would need to be further deliberated upon, because artificial intelligence can have the risk of profiling. It has its own dangers. So this is something which would require a very careful deliberation between various stakeholders in the judicial process. But going forward, I see that technology would have greater and greater relevance in the working of the legal profession, both among lawyers and certainly among judges, and in terms of judicial institutions as well.
In your judgments, be it the abortion rights for unmarried women, entry of women to Shabarimala temple, the decriminalization of adultery, the permanent commission for female army officers, etc., one cannot miss your notion and insights on feminist jurisprudence. In your opinion, where does feminism stand in adjudication and constitutional interpretation?
Well, I wouldn't like to give it a particular label by labeling, my approach to gender as being reflective of a feminist theory or ideology. To my mind, when we have dwelt on gender in all the judgments that we've been speaking about, whether it was the armed forces, whether it was decriminalization of adultery, whether it was in terms of intersectional discrimination, such as the intersection between disability and gender, we have been plainly doing a constitutional duty. The Constitution, to my mind, whether in terms of its preambular values or in terms of Article 15 or Article 21, speaks first and foremost about the dignity of all human life. And the work on gender which we have done is to further the pursuit of the constitutional ideal of equality. And equality would really be meaningless if it was not equality based on gender as well. So this is something which was at the forefront of my mission as a judge, as an administrator as well. Just to share one of the projects which we implemented, we came out with a gender handbook recently in the Supreme Court, and the purpose of the gender handbook was to highlight the gender inappropriate discourse which takes place in the course of legal arguments and in the judicial process. And what it was to remind people that in the society in which we live today and the society to which we are moving tomorrow, the use of gender inappropriate language has no place in our society. In terms of designating more women as senior counsel, since 1950 through to 2024, just about 13 women had been designated as senior counsel in the Supreme Court, senior advocates in the Supreme Court. This year, in 2024, in the month of February, we designated 12 women lawyers as senior counsel, and then again in August, another 10. This is really a sign of the changing nature of the legal profession as well, where more and more women are joining the legal profession as lawyers. And in terms of the recruitment which is being made to the district judiciaries across India, in most states, the recruitment of women is now clearly crossing the 50% threshold, in some states going up to 60% or 70%. But to my mind, it's important that we take positive steps to make the legal profession a gender equal place for women, a place of equal opportunity. Because in so many which ways I found that the legal profession when I joined it was patriarchal. Women were not coming out in large numbers. Even today there are fault lines. So women lawyers with whom I have had conversations still believe that people are not as keen to brief a young woman lawyer, and this has to change. And this can change really by having more and more women in the workplace at the forefront of decision making. Hopefully things would change. Change is already taking place on the ground, however slow it has been. But I do believe that we are moving towards a more gender equal society in the legal profession.
Given the massive changes and developments the Indian judiciary has undergone recently in its policies and practice, what new challenges and hurdles do you foresee with our judiciary in the coming future?
The principal challenge, I think, in the judiciary is to deal with the huge volume of cases and the backlog of cases. And we're not going to be able to deal with the backlog of cases unless we bring about structural changes in the judiciary. For instance, in the district judiciary, which is the first point of interface between common citizens and the law, as many as 21% of all judicial posts in the country are vacant. In terms of the manning of the staff of the district judiciary, 27% of posts are vacant. The first and foremost challenge for us is to fill up all the existing vacancies. Now, being a federal country, the recruitment to the district judiciary falls within the jurisdiction of the high courts and the governors. Now, high courts as well as the state governments have to take proactive measures to ensure that all recruitments to the judiciaries at the lowest level are completed on time. The second major challenge which we face is the challenge of infrastructure. Infrastructural spending on the Indian judiciary is extraordinarily low, and I think it's important that governments across the spectrum, both at the levels of the states and in the center, must increase the quantum of outlay on the Indian judiciary if truly we have to be a judiciary which is representative of not just a developing nation, but a nation which has such a high rate of economic growth and which is moving towards the future. We have to professionalize the work of our district judges. So much of the time which district judges do in a court on an everyday basis is spent in dealing with unproductive work, taking roll calls of cases. And I feel that it's important that the work of a court must be confined to what judges are expected to do, and not in terms of the administrative work which is required to be done in the courts. Many other areas are crying for attention. For instance, service of summons, as a result of which cases, particularly criminal cases, remain pending. Recording of evidence, which can be based on technology. We now have developed speech-to-text software, as a result of which we can record the testimony of witnesses far more effectively. Greater use of video conferencing, which would ensure that the testimony of witnesses is not delayed, particularly official witnesses, merely because of their unavailability due to their postings in different occupations in the government. So we have to take a multi-layered and multi-pronged approach to meeting the challenges of the Indian judiciary. Above all, it's important that our judges are trained in dealing with the challenges which would arise now in the future for the judiciary. One of the challenges which judges have to deal with is the rapid increase in the new legislation which is being enacted. And it's important we train our judges to deal with that legislation. Social media poses a great challenge for judges, and again, it's important that we train judges to deal with the special age in which we live, where everything said, everything done in a court of law becomes a subject matter of debate and discussion on social media.
For an illustrious judge, jurist, and a meticulous man of law, one can always presume retirement is only ad interim to you. Trusting on your unsullied commitment towards law and its practice, could you please illuminate us with your vision and plans ahead?
Well, it's just too early, I think, since I ended my tenure as Chief Justice of India on the 11th of November 2024. It's barely a month since I laid down my robes. I always believe that it's important that we flow with the tide, see what opportunities life holds out, and then take appropriate decisions based on what emerges. One thing which I would definitely like to do is to write. The second thing which I want to do is to teach. The third thing which I would love to do is to mentor the younger generation. And I don't know in which way I would be able to do all the three things, but these are the three clear things that I've thought of doing, namely to write, to teach, and to mentor the younger generation. Perhaps do some little professional work as well to keep my interest in the law going. But I'm deeply conscious of the impact which law has on society and the relevance of society in changing the course of law. And I would like to be part of that process where I can interact more freely now with citizens outside, particularly the younger citizens in the law schools and colleges and schools, tell them about the position of law, the kind of work which is being done by our courts, and to create a greater awareness of rights as well as responsibilities and duties.
If we take a detour to your life outside the law, your interest in music, travel, and reading are well renowned. Could you please share your passions and hobbies with us?
Well, I have numerous interests. I was not able to necessarily pursue all of my interests when I was a judge, and least of all when I was Chief Justice of India. But now that I have a little more free time on my hand, I think I'll be able to pursue some of those interests. I have a bucket list of my own, and I've already opened that bucket list to start doing things which I always dreamt of doing but couldn't have the time to do, like play a musical instrument. Reading is a passion for me, and even when I was extraordinarily busy as Chief Justice of India, I would wrap up my day by reading at least a few pages of an interesting book which I was reading. I love music. I love music of different genres, not just Indian classical music, but I love Indian light music. I love ghazals. I'm very fond of Western classical music, Western popular music as well. And I believe that, the diversity of music adds to the richness of our own lives. I love to travel, and I've learned so much about India traveling to remote places, hiking up in the mountains, and hopefully I think I can do more of that now that the responsibilities of holding the highest position in the Indian judiciary is behind me.
Before we conclude, what would be your advice to the young members of the bar?
My advice to the young generation in the bar is that to succeed at the bar is a hard grind. There are no shortcuts to success. And therefore, there is a virtue in patience, there's a virtue in dedication. But we must also realize that as lawyers, we are not just professionals. We are people to whom others come in search of advice when they are in distress. Others have very different tastes, ideas, ideologies. So we have to understand the broader context of law in society, and therefore look at the work which we do as lawyers from the perspective of being of help to others, because the most fulfillment that a lawyer derives as a professional, and many of them would go on to become judges, is in this pursuit of being of good to others. Because in being good to others, I think we create for a more just, a more equal society. Of course, down the line, success necessarily adds to the benefits which lawyers themselves get in the profession. But overall, the great message of the law is that the law is an important source in a democratic society of providing justice to citizens. And finally, my message to all the young lawyers would be that when the call of higher duty comes, and the duty to hold a responsible public office, not just as judges but elsewhere in society, they should not shun that opportunity and take up higher positions of responsibility to be of service to the nation and our society.